The call came in just after dawn, the kind of hour when truth still feels negotiable. A man's voice, steady but strained, told police his wife was gone. Not late, not unreachable. Gone. Her car was still in the driveway, her phone silent, her side of the bed untouched. He said her name the way people do when they want it to mean something else. Missing, not dead. Missing is a word that leaves room for hope. It also leaves room for lies. And in towns like this, disappearances don't arrive with sirens. They seep in quietly, through kitchen windows and church pews, through the soft assumptions neighbors make about good marriages and closed doors. The husband said they'd argued. Nothing unusual. Everyone argues. He said she went for a walk. She needed air. She needed space. He stayed home. He waited. He worried. He called. And when worry turned into something colder, he dialed for help. And at first, the story fit. It always does. The house showed no signs of struggle. No broken glass. No blood. No neighbors heard a scream. There was only the absence of a woman and the presence of a man who seemed desperate to find her. The kind of man you want to believe. The kind of man who shakes hands with officers and answers questions before they're finished asking, but absence has a gravity of its own. It pulls attention to what remains, to what's too clean, to what's rehearsed. Investigators walked the room slowly, listening to the silence, noting the angles of light, the places where time seemed to pause, and then someone noticed the cameras. Unassuming, installed for security, watching the front door, the driveway, the side yard, the kind of cameras people forget about until they don't, and cameras don't care about marriage. They don't care about fear or reputation. They don't blink. They don't forget. And they don't negotiate with the truth. Somewhere inside those recordings, the morning rewound itself. Somewhere a story waited to contradict a man who said he was alone when his wife vanished. And they started with the night before, scrolling through hours the way you scroll through memories you wish weren't yours. Time stamps ticking forward, headlights passing, moths crossing the frame. Nothing that mattered until it did. Just after midnight, the front door camera caught movement. Not the casual movement of someone stepping out for air, but the stiff, deliberate posture of a man carrying weight that resisted him. His shoulders leaned forward. His steps shortened. He paused once, as if listening for something that might stop him, and the shape in his arms was wrapped in a blanket. Not neatly, hastily, the kind of wrapping you do when you don't want to see what you're holding. He adjusted his grip, and for a second the fabric slipped, revealing hair. Long dark, the same length his wife wore it, the same way she wore it to bed. And he didn't look at the camera. People who know they're being watched either perform or avoid. He did neither. He moved like someone who had already decided the world was empty. He loaded the bundle into the back of his vehicle and closed the hatch with care, pressing it down until it latched. No rush, no panic, just finality. And hours later, the same camera showed him returning alone. No blanket, no bundle. He wiped his hands on his jeans before unlocking the door. Inside, another camera caught him standing in the kitchen, staring at the sink as if expecting it to confess. He ran water. He washed nothing. He dried his hands anyway, and by morning, he had rehearsed the version of himself he would present to police. Concerned, confused, cooperative. He pointed to the cameras as proof of transparency, forgetting that transparency only works when there's nothing behind it. Investigators didn't confront him immediately. They watched. They noted how often his story shifted around the fixed points of time, how his sentences softened where the footage was sharp, and missing is a word that asks for patience. Evidence asks for courage, and the cameras had already chosen a side, and when they finally sat him down, the room felt smaller than it was. Fluorescent lights hum like insects, filling silences no one wants to claim. He folded his hands the way people do when they're pretending to pray. He repeated the word missing again and again, as if repetition could wear it into truth. He said she must have left after he fell asleep. He said maybe she met someone. He said anything that placed distance between his hands and her body, and they let him talk. Silence is a tool, and they used it carefully. Every lie needs air. He filled the room with it. But lies have weight, and eventually they sink. When they mentioned the cameras, his eyes flicked just once to the corner of the ceiling. Not fear, calculation. He asked which cameras, how many where. Questions that don't come from innocence, but from inventory. And they showed him still frames first. Frozen moments stripped of motion, easier to deny. He squinted, leaned forward, shrugged. Could be anyone, he said. It's dark. Then they pressed play. Time returned. Movement returned. Gravity returned. The blanket sagged exactly where a human body sags. His own body on the screen moved with a familiarity he couldn't escape. When the clip ended, the room stayed quiet. The kind of quiet that waits for collapse. And he didn't cry. He didn't shout. He didn't ask about his wife. He asked for a lawyer. And outside that room, the town continued as if nothing had changed. Kids boarded buses. Coffee was poured. Flags moved in the wind. Most people never realize how close they are to standing on the edge of someone else's nightmare. Inside the evidence, a marriage rewrote itself. Arguments gained new meanings. Silences grew teeth. What had looked like normal became something staged, and investigators turned from the man to the map. Roads, cameras, gaps. Where someone might go at night believing darkness would forgive them. The footage had shown the beginning. Now they needed the ending, and they traced his route the way archaeologists trace old rivers. By what's missing, not what's there. Traffic cameras caught fragments of his vehicle moving through sleeping intersections, red lights blinking like watchful eyes. He avoided highways, took back roads, the kind locals use when they don't want witnesses. Each turn narrowed the possibilities, tightening the circle around a place where secrets go to rot. And just before dawn, his car disappeared from every lens. A dead zone. Woods thick enough to swallow sound. An abandoned quarry locals warned their kids about but never talked through. The kind of place history forgets on purpose. Search teams moved in carefully, boots sinking into mud that remembered every step. Dogs pulled hard on their leads, noses low, urgent. The air smelled like wet earth and iron. And they found the blanket first, not buried, discarded. A gesture that said the job was done. A few yards away, disturbed ground told the rest of the story. Shallow, rushed. A grave made by someone who thought time was on his side. When they uncovered her, the silence broke into something heavier. Her face still recognizable, her injuries not. And back at the house, investigators rewatched the footage with new eyes. The pauses, the way he listened before opening the door, the care in how he closed it. These weren't the movements of panic. They were the movements of rehearsal, of someone who had imagined this ending before the night arrived. And when they brought him the news, his shoulders dropped, not in grief, but in relief. The burden of pretending lifted. He said it was an accident, said words got out of control, said he never meant for it to happen, as if intention matters once the ground has been broken. And in towns like this, people ask how no one noticed. The truth is quieter. Monsters don't announce themselves. They live in routines, in shared last names, in kitchens with security cameras that see everything and say nothing, until someone asks the right question. And by the time the story reached the public, it had already hardened into something unrecognizable. Headlines reduced a life to a cautionary sentence. Neighbors remembered smiles, not silences. Friends replayed conversations, searching for hidden warnings, as if tragedy leaves breadcrumbs when it passes through. It doesn't. It moves like a shadow at noon, visible only after it's already crossed you. And in the interrogation room, the man tried to rebuild himself with explanations. Stress, money, words he claimed were said in anger, never meant to land. He spoke about the night as if it happened to him, not because of him. As if violence were weather, sudden, unavoidable. But the footage never changed. It showed choice. It showed time. It showed a man who paused to lock a door before carrying his wife out of it. And prosecutors laid the timeline out like a slow autopsy. Each frame of video became a sentence. Each pause a paragraph. They showed how the argument escalated, how the cameras inside the house went dark for minutes that would never be recovered, how the system mysteriously came back online just in time to document the disposal. Security meant to protect had become a witness that could not be intimidated, and families watching from home felt something fracture. This wasn't a stranger in the woods. This was a husband, a shared mortgage, a shared last name. The horror wasn't that it happened, it was how easily it fit inside ordinary life. How many kitchens look like that one? How many cameras are recording truths no one wants to review? And if you're still watching, you're already braver than most. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if this was your bloodline? And because that's the question this case leaves behind, not how he killed her, but how close the rest of us live to doors that lock quietly from the inside. And the trial moved slowly, like something heavy being dragged across a floor no one wanted scratched. Every day the footage played again. Every day, the same walk, the same bundle, the same door closing with careful hands. Jurors stopped seeing a man and started seeing a pattern, not rage, not chaos, a sequence. Violence with structure is harder to forgive because it suggests thought, and the defense tried to carve doubt from shadows, grainy angles, blind spots. They spoke about marriage as pressure, as if vows were a weight that could crush someone into becoming a different creature. But pressure doesn't explain preparation. It doesn't explain cameras going offline. It doesn't explain the choice to hide instead of help. Accidents call for ambulances. Intent calls for darkness. And when the verdict came, it landed without drama, guilty. The word echoed less like judgment and more like closure trying to do its job. The sentence was long enough to feel symbolic, not long enough to feel fair. He stared forward as it was read, absorbing years the way he'd absorbed the story he tried to sell. Calm, contained, empty. And afterward, the house went on the market. Fresh paint, new locks, the cameras still there, blinking patiently. Someone else would live inside those walls, cook in that kitchen, sleep in that bedroom. History doesn't leave when we ask it to. It waits. It settles into corners. It listens. And this case didn't end with a verdict. It ended with a question that keeps resurfacing in police departments and living rooms across the country. When technology sees everything, why do we still miss the warning signs? Maybe because we trust stories more than evidence. Maybe because we want love to be louder than truth, and CCTV didn't create this crime. It only preserved it. A reminder that some secrets aren't buried. They're recorded, waiting for someone brave enough to press play. And years from now, the footage will still exist. Stored on servers, copied into evidence rooms, replayed in training seminars where officers learn what calm guilt looks like. Long after names fade, the walk from the door to the car will remain, a looped ghost. Proof that some endings are written long before anyone notices the ink. And cases like this don't just close files. They change how people see their own lives. Husbands glance at wives differently. Wives listen more closely to the silence after arguments. Cameras meant to guard against strangers become quiet judges of intimacy. Trust starts to feel conditional, like something that should be backed up and time-stamped. And the woman at the center of this story is often remembered for how she disappeared, not how she lived. That's another theft. She had routines, preferences, small habits no camera ever cared to record. Her life didn't begin with a blanket or end in a shallow grave. But history has a way of compressing people into the moment that explains them to strangers. And what makes this story linger isn't just the violence. It's the ordinariness. No mask. No midnight intruder. Just a marriage collapsing inward, captured by a lens that never looked away. It forces a reckoning with the idea that evil doesn't always arrive screaming. Sometimes it whispers plans and waits for the house to go quiet. And in the end, CCTV didn't solve a mystery, it stripped one bare. It showed that the most dangerous stories are the ones we want to believe. The ones that let us sleep beside someone and never question what they're capable of when the lights go out. And this is how forgotten archives speak. Not with answers, but with warnings that the past isn't buried beneath American soil. It's wired into walls, watching, patient, ready to tell a different story the moment someone dares to look.